Oh, Foxy, it's your birthday. Not for real, real, just for play, play. This is Cree Summer, and Moana Nui will be right back.
Aloha, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode of the Moana Nui podcast. My name's Moana, and I'm the host of the show. Tonight, we are um, having our topic on rain talks. I think it's been a little bit since we've had an episode, so we're happy to have Rain back with us, along with some new friends to the show. Jemarc's been here before, but we also have a new friend, Jordane, who is joining us tonight. Yay! So before we get started, I will do some quick intros to kind of let you guys introduce you to our new guests, and then I'll hand it over to Shay for tonight's conversation. So I'll start with Jordane. She is a trauma coach who specializes in guiding individuals through the journey of healing from past traumas. With a compassionate and holistic approach, she empowers clients to navigate their emotions, develop coping strategies, and build resilience. Her background in psychology, counseling, and trauma informed care equips her to provide personalized support tailored to each of her clients' needs. So we'll welcome Jordane to the show. She's having a little bit of technical difficulty, so hopefully we'll be able to resolve those quickly. But we are, happy to have her join us on tonight's episode. Secondly, we have Jemarc Axinto. Uh, they are a radical spiritual guide, a meditation teacher, Ayurvedic health teacher. Hopefully, I said that
Oh,
right.
dang, I needed to send y'all an updated thing. You got my old one. It's so long.
Yes, it has been a while, so we
She
do need
she
to
does a lot.
yes, a lot of good work, in this space, and just great energy. I always love, sharing space with Jamark, and all the hugs, and yeah, just being happy nerds together. Um, so welcome Jamark back to the show, and then of course, last but certainly not least, our leader, Shae Reigns, aka Rain Talks, aka She Queen, aka Full Mental Alchemist, all the things. But I'm actually happy to see her. It's been a while since we've connected too, so she's looking beautiful as always.
Thank
But
you.
tonight
Facts.
is about y'all. So I am going to drop to the back. To those who are watching, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to engage in the comments. If you have questions, comments, want to throw some ideas out there, we always welcome this on the podcast. And take it away.
BBL
So,
Drizzy.
hello and
BBL.
out there, good people. This is an episode that I have been looking forward to. So looking forward to it. Um, just for the sake of creating another little blush on the other side of the screen there. Just shout out to my mom because she's been looking forward to this episode too. Um,
Hi,
so
Mama
I
Reigns.
I, I want to make sure that I start out with my disclaimer. I am not a certified sex therapist. It is important to say that because we are talking about sex. And so it is important to make sure that you know I am not a certified sex therapist. I am a therapist. I am a generalist, so to speak. I consider myself a um, transition specialist and not in the trans person's way, but in the generally speaking, I help people transition through different phases in life. So whether that's young people transitioning through youth, and most of us have been through that. For those of you who are still young and still transitioning, so those of us have been through the transition from young kid to adulthood, or from adulthood to aging adulthood. That's what I do. I help people work through all of the things that come with that. But I am not a sex therapist. And so when it comes to more specific things, disorders, and so forth and so on, I strongly recommend, um, even those with other symptomology that comes from sexual trauma, I strongly recommend that you actually get a specialist, an actual certified sex therapist to help you through those transitions and those adjustments in life so that you can do what it do, you know? Um, so my mom's favorite part of the last time that we had Jemarc on the screen with us was when we were talking about dicks and what did I say before? Something about dicks and tricks and stuff like that. She got a real kick out of that. And so I want to make sure also that that one of the biggest reasons why I was really looking forward to having this conversation is because we are going to be talking about all the dicks and the vajayjays and everything and everyone in between. So, but as it relates to our relationships, okay, so that's where we are today. We want to make sure that we can empower some people in their sexuality and in their personhood. So, with that said, Jemarc, educate us, please. Give us give us what we need in this beginning of the episode moment to say, why is sex not an apology? Why is sex not a reward? Um, why are we out here doing things with dicks and the JJs that have nothing to do with what we should be doing with them?
Ooh, you're just like we're just gonna kick off. We're doing
Yeah,
that. We're just gonna be, and I'm about to dive in. Whoa, whoa. Speaking of sex,
yeah,
yeah. So I almost feel like I do have to bring in a bit of the psycho-spiritual lens to this.
absolutely.
And so before I can even get into sex is not a forgiveness, sex is not that, I think we need to touch base on like why, for those who aren't asexual, why does sex feel good? Why do people enjoy, in particular, the orgasm,
Mm,
if you will? And to get into the psycho-spiritual realm, it's because it brings you to a space of absolute presence. And that's why people enjoy being in that state without giving it a name, right? That moment of climax, that moment of orgasm, what's happening there is all the bullshit's fading away. It's no longer like, I'm me, you are you, we got bills to pay, we got problems at home, we got all this stuff. It is all of that melts away. The neurochemicals in your brain start producing all of the happy chemicals, the dopamine, the serotonin, the oxytocin. And when your body and your brain doesn't normalize that regulation as a day-to-day thing, when it's reliant upon external factors, then sex is a means of gaining that. And that's how it can become addictive. Um, Addiction, and luckily science is starting to catch up to this, and Western medicine is starting to catch up to this. Addiction is less about the substance, it's about the reason why. And I want to lead with that because it's an important thing to recognize and understand. You can become addicted to anything. There are even addictions that in a capitalistic colonized society that we consider good, right? Like hustle culture. Hustle culture is just workaholism, but we think it's a good thing. We consider it a virtue instead of an absolute vice. But then we look at things like alcohol or drugs or in some levels and layers for us who are geeks like technology, and we're like, oh, well, that's clearly like a terrible end all be all bad thing. Anything you engage in can become an addiction because what we're looking for is a path outside of pain, a path away from pain. And to come back to the original question of why should it not be used as a reward or as forgiveness, it's because the the presence required to achieve forgiveness is one that you need to have your brain there with you. You need to have the thought space there with you, and you need to be able to navigate it in a healthy way. Sex is a beautiful, wonderful, amazing thing for those who enjoy it, for those who prefer it. Sometimes it can be casual, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's a question of intention, and it's a question of impact because it does because we're not talking about masturbation at the moment. It does take two, at least. Some people takes more, and that's okay too. We love to see it, but it takes at least two to engage with something like that and to be totally present with someone in that way. So the reason why it can't be used as forgiveness or reward is because at a psychospiritual level, you're sacrificing that presence. Instead of it being, oh my God, I'm so here and I'm so with you. It's like that first time you have sex with someone you're in love with and you're like nothing matters. Any little quirks they may have, it doesn't bother you as much as it would otherwise. You're so there for each other. But the minute you attach a condition to it, then that takes away that presence. Then it becomes, this is the best word I can think of for it, but I hesitate from using it because I generally don't like using violent language. It becomes, in a way, weaponized. I don't think that makes you a bad person, but it does invite the notion of what are you trying to escape from and run from? What are you trying to not engage with that really does need to be engaged with? It becomes a numbing agent at the same time. So instead of like, hey, we need to talk about these issues we're having, oh, but the sex is amazing, you're still going to have those issues when you're not boinking, to use a really fun word for it. And when you're not boinking and speloinking, the problems are still going to be there. And we're not bonobos, right? Bonobos greet each other by fucking, and that's their culture, and that's fine. But we can't be doing that. So I hope that answered the question and also offered some context that I feel like is needed and necessary.
I love your answers, all of them. Especially extra points for the bonobo, because those are like my favorite primate group to actually quote, because I love how they handle issues communally. Like when the bonobos are having an issue, female bonobos just like, hey, want some eggs? Want some? Cool, let's get this going. Like,
Yeah.
and instantly everybody's happy. That's how they solve problems. That is how they do politics. That is how they decide on who's going to eat first. It's just, let's get it in. Let's calm everything down. We don't have to fight between us or amongst ourselves.
I also want to pause and shout out Jordane, who's having technical issues. You might have heard they were introduced, but we're not just like, ignore Jordane. We're just on a schedule. But we send love to you, Jordane.
Yes, we are looking forward to when we get this thing straightened out. Oh, okay. But no, I loved your responses because it is so wonderful. You made several wonderful points, and I want to kind of rewind to the part where you said for those who enjoy it, when you're not boinking, those problems are still gonna be there. Like, yes, the sex is great, but then when the sex isn't happening, you have to deal with someone who you think you want to murder every time. So that's definitely not gonna, that does not a healthy relationship make. And of course, here when we talk about relationships, we're not necessarily just talking about romantic relationships, because of course it can also be very casual. But we are also talking about, friendships and kindred ships, where you share a spiritual connection or what have you. And if it just so happens that a part of that spiritual connection process involves sexual activity, you don't want to be engaging in the act from, I guess, we'll call it a materialistic perspective. Not necessarily, no shade to sex workers, because all power to you. I'm talking about where it's a means to an end in your relationship.
Yeah.
So it's when we are, as you said, weaponizing it, like, if you don't do this, then there's no sex for you. Like that, if we change the word, let's erase sex. Get my little pencil. We're erasing
Also,
sex.
1 second.
And now we're putting
I have
in.
to let our, sorry, I have to let our maintenance person in, but I'm gonna have my headphones. I can still hear you. I just,
Okay.
so I can hear your points. I just you won't see me for a sec.
Okay, cool. So we're erasing the word sex, and instead we're putting in the word. So if you don't give me this, then I won't feed you. because ultimately sex is a part of, let's call it, the emotional fuel in a healthy relationship. Or I'm going to have sex
No
with you
problem.
so you'll leave me alone to do blah blah blah. So it's all of these different kinds of things that oftentimes in our relationships we use sex like it's a weapon, like it's a bargaining chip, and it diminishes sometimes, or it can diminish the quality of the rest of the relationship because it's being so weaponized. You know, if you are looking at your significant other and thinking, if I don't do what this person wants, I'm not going to get to eat for the next week, right? Like I said, we erasing the word sex and we're putting in food. Okay? There will be no food for you for the next week if you don't. How is that going to change how you treat that person? How is that going to change how you see that person? Because now they're kind of holding you hostage for sustenance, right? That is sustenance. And ultimately, sex is a kind of sustenance. We need it. Not just because it feels good, but because we're, you know, only like 2 genes or something like that away from the bonobo anyway. Like, and it's one of those things that we don't want to take for granted in our relationships, because especially the romantic ones, for those who are into that sort of thing, um, it's a part of the bonding ritual, of the human bonding ritual. It's what makes the difference between your absolute best friend and the person or people you are choosing to have that kind of a bond with. So if it's weaponized, now you are weaponizing a portion of your relationship. So let's rewind 3 or 4 episodes back. Um, isn't that what narcissists do? Isn't that what those people in abusive relationships do? Like, love bombing and then taking away the love and holding it hostage until you conform to whatever it is that their instability requires.
Mm.
I mean, we can put the word sex back in there for this. There, it's back, right? It's a part of sustaining your relationship and being able to feel that connection on a very literal sense. It's not just that energy connection where it's just like, oh, when they walk in the room, I feel this way. It's more like, oh, when they're inside me or on top of me or da 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 da, whatever your mechanics require, I feel this kind of way. And if we're not properly present in the moment because we're thinking about that thing that they did that that we're using this sex to get forgiven for, I don't even know how you get to have an orgasm in that sense.
Mm. And it's also and we talked about this like the last time we chatted, right? Um, I don't like using the word narcissist unless someone's been clinically diagnosed as narcissistic, because it is a clinical diagnosis. But
It-
people with trauma, PTSD or CPTSD, can exhibit narcissistic tendencies because they're in a survival state. So it really gets to the headspace. Now we're getting cultural, right? And like, um, we look back, even it still happens today. For sure, it still happens today. But we even go back to like as early as the 90s, and there was still this culture of like, if you don't, and I'm speaking very binary, very cis hetero relationships, of like, if you don't help around the house, I'm withholding sex. And there's a cultural component, and I'm not saying like because women back then sucked. There's a cultural component to it of um, that was how they were able to reclaim power in these dynamics and structures. I think the reason why we're able to even have this conversation today is because collectively, And while there is a very vocal majority who are against this, collectively we're moving more towards an equitable society to an extent. Like, Shae, you have this incredible work that you do as a woman of color, and that's beautiful and iconic, and that would not necessarily have been a reality 10, 20, 30, 40, not 10, but like, 30, 40, 50 years ago, to the degree that it is. And so some of it also includes stripping away these old paradigms, these old senses of intergenerational trauma, these things that are embedded in pop culture that we're teaching people from a young age of what to expect in relationships, not even just from their parents' dynamics, but just what they're consuming through media. So like, I just the reason why I'm saying it is because if anyone is still engaging with it because they feel like that's the only way they feel like they can have a say or a voice or have their needs met in a relationship, I don't want anyone to feel ashamed of doing what they have to do to survive in that moment, and also acknowledge and recognize if you feel empowered to do so, end the relationship. If the only way you can get your needs met is by weaponizing something that should be intimate and beautiful, to Shay's point, the question is, have you ever had an orgasm? Because that usually is the case that it's not a thing. And then the follow-up to that is, are you in a position where you can leave that relationship so that you can start rebuilding yourself and getting to a place where sex can feel fun and intimate and goofy as hell. Like, that's why we joke about it, because sex is super funny. Like, when you think, like, sometimes I think of aliens and like if they like sex is like a cosmic joke to them because we don't got the same equipment and it must look so ridiculous. You know what I mean? So like,
What is this
yeah.
swooshing about?
They have so much content about this thing they do. What is it? Like, who knows?
What is this? I think it's also a worthwhile point to make, especially when it comes to the orgasm. It has been treated like this elusive, mythical thing. A great poet once said, "Some say that sex is overrated, but they just ain't doing it right." Ludicrous. So that's like one of my favorite lines in that Jamie Foxx song.
Unpredictable.
Because it's like, because the whole song is all about sex. But it's like, and again, excluding those who are asexual and so forth, there's a certain level of, and those who have experienced sexual trauma, and so they have a different level of inability. It's one of those things that I remember hearing once someone saying that the orgasm is not the point. And of course, this was a much younger Shae, and I looked at them like they just grew an extra 4 arms, and I'm like, "What do you mean? Yeah. You're not.
You're like, how are you gonna run a
Are you
race
not
and not
comprehending?
finish?
What do you mean that is not the point, right? It is important to understand that a part and a very important point of the sex act is not actually the orgasm, but it can be that bond, right? Some people actually find it is impossible for them to reach orgasm if they don't have the bond first. Like, if they're not actually making that connection, then the orgasm is not going to happen no matter how hard they try.
That's
That
me.
I
It's
did
called
not mean
it's
to
called
pun that,
demisexuality, and I fall on
right?
that spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's so important to understand that to a certain extent, because that's how it had to be explained to me for it to compute. Because otherwise, I was just like, if I'm not going to have the orgasm, I don't want it. Thou shalt not take that from me, sir. That is the point. But no, it is also a part, it is also important to recognize the part of the connection that is there. And when you are weaponizing, or when you are withholding, or when you're engaging in any of this unhealthy uh, emotional gymnastics, you mess up that part too. Because imagine if you're trying to connect with someone and they're like, we're not even going to have that connection because you didn't walk the dog today. Or in your case, the cat. Like, like, I'm sorry, what? So it's one of those things, we have, wait, let me get the word right, been puritanical about our sex acts culturally, at least in this country and many others. My family is from a very Catholic country. Um, so
Big same.
the Puritan, my inner Puritan is like, yeah, that's a thing. How dare you? And we have been very puritanical about the sex act, and oh well, sex is the thing that we do when a mommy and a daddy love each other. Okay, technically they probably should not have been a mommy or a daddy before that part, but okay, we'll go with that. When a mommy and a daddy love each other, that's what they do to show that they love each other. And it's only because of love. And that is so not the case. Because when we equate the love to the sex, then we also tend to mess things up, right? Because that's how we end up with some of these other disorders out there that make some of us cringe, um, because they are equating the attraction that they have to sometimes inanimate objects, sometimes children, sometimes, dot, 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 fill in the blank, to love. And that's actually not what's happening at all. Or the fact that we know now that rape has nothing to do with love. It is not an act of love. Even though it can be sexual, it is an act of power. And the need for another human being to exert power over another one. That's what rape is about. And I said human being, let me rewind that, because back in the day, we had this TV show called Flipper. Not everybody's going to remember Flipper, but I remember the beloved dolphin Flipper. And growing up watching Flipper, and Flipper used to save the kids and used to go out there and do all the cute ocean Flipper things. And then later on, I found out that that particular species of dolphin engages in rape.
Yep.
And it is not a sexual thing for the bottlenose dolphin either. So we know that when sex is used forcefully upon another being, because I said human before, on another being, period, it is not for the purpose of love. It is not about creating a lasting loving bond. It is about exerting and feeling power over the other being, exerting dominance, right? And to watch the Flippers engage in a gang rape was horrifying for me as an adult, because I'm like, but it's
I can't believe you watched it.
Huh?
Oof. I said I can't believe you watched it.
Well,
I heard that. I heard that
fact.
Happen. I heard that fact, and I was like, "That's enough for me. I don't gotta engage. I don't gotta
It
prove it
was
to myself."
horrendous.
Yeah,
It was horrendous. It was horrendous. It was one of those nature videos, and they showed, basically it was like 2 or 3
Oh, I don't
male
need
dolphins.
details. No, I'm good. I
Well,
don't need
I
details.
know, I feel like now I have to explain to the people.
Well, I
But
will say though, that can be very triggering for anybody who is a survival of sexual
you're
trauma. So I
so
don't think we have to explain it to
you
them.
can go and look for this. That they definitely weren't Flipper, not to defame Flipper, the dolphin in the show, but you can definitely find this video, or probably several videos, of these dolphins taking advantage of a mother dolphin. And so it was horrifying, and I was like, this is not, so horrendous acts against other beings is not unique to humans. And I'm an animal lover first. So that was like, this isn't real.
Mhm.
But to the point of, because we're talking about other species and their sex habits, none of these things that we experience are so unique to us. And so when we have become so puritanical about what it is that we do, when all the other species do it too, right? Of mammal, being specific, um, it is so important to recognize that we can't just keep existing in this little bubble where we think that it's about a mommy and a daddy being in love. It's actually a physical need. The sex is a physical need that has several different uses beyond just, ooh, this feels good, and also we need to procreate because we have this biological imperative that requires us to be fruitful across the planet, as if there aren't enough of us on it already. Sorry, that was my little dig. But it's a thing. It is a thing, and I want to make sure that we touch on the other intricacies of not existing in the puritanical bubble of what sex is and what sex isn't, because we don't get to talk about dicks and vajayjays or vaginas or penises or schlongs or dongs or any of those things, um, without having to recognize that, like you said, Jemarc, once upon a time, me just saying that would have like 50 random people popping through like a SWAT team. Like, hold up, wait a minute, how dare you say all of those words to the people,
Mhm.
as if it's a thing that we don't do. And especially now in 2024, um, where we are coming to a place where we can recognize and acknowledge things like the list of genitalia words that I just used, or the fact that intersex is a thing. Um, please use Google, or Jamar can rattle off some of those definitions as well, where it's so important to recognize that we are at a wonderful place to be alive, so that everybody can actually get their sex ed on in a safe and open way. Like, because it wasn't that long ago. You said, well, when you were talking about me as a professional, like, well, maybe 30 years ago. I'm talking 5 to 10 years ago. As a matter of fact, there are some circles right now today where the fact that I said penis is causing somebody to get highs.
Oh, my stars and garters. Oh, fiddle dee dee. I think I'm gonna comment on something specific in relation to this. And the first thing is you're absolutely right. And it is the issue with what you're talking about, because it took me a while I was trying to follow your train of thought. It creates a lot of shame around it. And when there's shame
Yes,
around something, there can't be appropriate education around it. And I think that's the point you're trying to get to. I
that
was
is the
like,
point that I was trying to
we're
get to.
now we're talking about dolphins, and I got a little thrown, but I'm here. I'm with you. I follow you. Yeah. So,
Sorry, my ADD brain takes over sometimes.
fam, me too. It's all good. I get it. ADHD is real. Yeah.
It's for real.
So until we reduce the shame narrative, until we actually admit to each other as a collective, hey, this is a normal act that everyone does at some point. Not everyone, once again, asexual people, but at some point, most people engage with some form of sexual expression, be it self pleasure or pleasure with a partner or pleasuring others or whatever it may be. And I think what can happen is an overcorrection sometimes. Um, once again, not shaming the sex workers, y'all out there, get your bag, but the ways in which we see on the hypersexualization on social media, which is presented as algorithmically, you know? So it's not just like, hey, people are embracing their sexuality. It is utilizing something that the algorithm will push up, will give more views, will then get people into the heads, oh, I'll get noticed for my sexual expression. I'll get noticed for my sexuality. And then it also creates an audience that expects and demands it. You can have somebody doing something as simple as crocheting on the internet and they're fully covered up, and then people are still asking if they have an OnlyFans. Like, having an OnlyFans isn't the problem. Creating a culture where there's an expectation is. And so what we're facing here is centuries of puritanical culture, centuries of this puritanical idea that sex should be hidden and behind closed doors. Before that, there were plenty of global indigenous cultures where sex was done publicly, like the consummation of sex between a partnership. I don't know if they necessarily would have called it marriage back then, but a union of two people would have been done publicly in front of the entire tribe, and it was done as a celebration. Um, the issue comes when we allow social expectation to embed a feeling of responsibility mixed with shame. The feeling of meeting demands and expectations that don't need to be met, but because we're societally told, like it's that whole trend that was done on TikTok where it was like, would you ever rather have a gay son or a thought daughter? And the amount of people who are like, gay son, absolutely gay son. Like, man, we just out here hating women. But like,
Oh my God.
it's
I'm
yeah,
sorry. That is horrifying. I'm laughing, but I am horrified. Like, why?
yeah, it was a
Oh
thing.
my God.
Yeah,
Go
and
ahead.
they like brought it to
That is
celebrities on the red
horrifying.
carpet and stuff like that. And it's just like, it's a situation where it is complicated because people are so insecure. It's not complicated. It's actually incredibly simple when you remove the ego and the insecurity from it. Sex is a personal act, and it's a personal act that requires consent. Consent can take many, 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 many forms, but it needs to be clear and communicated and constantly communicated as the process goes on. If you keep it that simple, then in whatever ways people engage with sex is whatever ways people engage with sex. But with the advent of things like social media, and media in general, really, it creates an
Me in
expectation.
general, definitely.
It creates an
Even in the
expectation. I mean,
newspapers, even in the newspapers back
newspapers,
in the day,
even
the way how they did things. Oh my gosh. Anyway, continue. Go
even
ahead. Go ahead.
Shakespeare is hella horny. Like, it cracks me up that I was an English major in undergrad, but like it cracks me up that we treat Shakespeare like he's high-minded when really during his time he was lowbrow as fuck. Like he was so lowbrow, and that was kind of the point. And so,
Like that one line in what was it, Hamlet, where he calls his mother common.
yeah,
That was Hamlet, right? Because I think it
I'm
was
pretty
Hamlet.
sure it's been a minute.
Yeah, I'm like
Yeah.
pretty sure it was Hamlet, and he's going off on this monologue to his mom or whatever, and he calls her common, and what that actually meant back then was that she was a hoe.
hmm Yeah, it was I
Like,
madame, it's
oh,
common. Yeah, 'tis common.
mm-hmm,
Called his mom a common whore. And it's
mm-hmm.
and when you create a culture where people are so, and this comes back full circle to the initial topic, right? Relationship building, forgiveness, stuff like that. When you have people who are so afraid and ashamed of sex, or admitting they have sex, or admitting they enjoy sex, especially if you're in a
Or admitting, or
fembody,
just talking about their own genitalia.
or talking about their own genitalia, when you have that, then people have to create reasons. So it's like, so audience, hello. I lead a queer retreat every summer, and it's exclusively for queer beings. The first day of this retreat, the thing that I tell all these people, it's called queer liberation. The first thing I tell all these people who are coming, they want to know what queer liberation is, they're all about, is like, hey, guess what? I don't know if I'm actually demisexual or I just grew up Catholic, and that's just embedded in my brain. Like, I don't know. I have to figure that out. I don't know if I'm actually
That is
polyamorous or if I'm just like
hilarious.
deeply afraid of being alone. I don't know if I'm actually
Right.
I don't know if I'm actually non-binary or if I'm just exhausted by gestures vaguely meant. Like these are things that I have the liberty and freedom to ask of myself because there's no shame around it. But to get to a place
Amen.
of reduced shame was to do some deep healing and deep self-reflection and deep introspection. There's a thing that goes around on the internet, and I feel like it can be very powerful, but it's always without bigger context because things are all soundbitey now. It's always like you can't love
Right.
someone until you love yourself, right? We've heard this
Which
phrase
I
before.
hate.
You can't in a relation until you love yourself. And I like adding context to that. It's not that you can't. Everyone is deserving of love and companionship and relationship. But without that radical sense of self love, you'll never be able to fully embody, embrace, trust, and feel safe in a relationship, safe in security, safe in partnership. So, unless you can find a partner who is so on top of their own shit that when you're activated, they don't get activated, it can be really
Word.
difficult. And the thing about healing relationship trauma and healing any trauma is in a lot of ways you have to be around the trigger to heal it. So like you can't just be like, I'm healed from my relationship trauma. Really? When's the last time you've been in a relationship? 20 years ago. Well, have you?
Oh, that
Have you?
works.
Have you? You did all the studying and all the homework, but you didn't take the practical. Like, where's the where's the
I
hands-on
love
work
it.
here?
I am
Right?
taking that. You didn't take the practical.
Yeah, you didn't take the
Love it.
practical. It needs to happen. And so if we're going to get to this place that we desire and aspire to, where sex isn't weaponized in this way and isn't used in this way, it's not a question of you, individual, listening to this now, reflecting on your entire life and being like, oh my God, I'm terrible. It's not about, because you can't shame yourself into healing.
Nope.
It's not about that. It's just about recognizing that, like, hey, the thing that you felt you needed to do to survive may be the same thing keeping you sick. If you feel like to survive in your partnership, you have to create conditions and withhold sex, then maybe you need to not be in that partnership. Or, or maybe there's something within you that's convinced you of this narrative. And because you weren't raised in an environment where it was modeled for you how to set healthy boundaries, and because once again, parents don't talk about sex with their kids, there's no one to model after. Like, how do you communicate
Or
about
not
sex
in a healthy way.
healthily? Yeah,
Not in a
yeah,
healthy way. There we go. Not in a healthy way.
yeah.
Because some parents, they definitely talk about sex to their kids, but it's like, don't do
Yeah. I totally meant healthy.
it. Don't
Yeah,
do it.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, not in a healthy way. Either not in the don't do it way, not in the overly hypersexualized promiscuous way, which some parents do as well. But in the very
Mhm.
like, because you didn't have that to model, and because maybe you're hearing this, listen, Kuyate Jemarc's talking to you now. Honey, it's okay. It's okay if right now you feel uncomfortable about everything we're talking about. And it's okay if right now you're reflecting on all the decisions you made. Healing will involve grief for past decisions. It's a natural part of the process, and it's not too late. It is always possible to change. It is always possible to grow. It is always possible to heal. So if you're hearing this, you're like, you know what? Yeah, I do tell my partner that I'm withholding sex a lot because they won't do things. Maybe I can explore other ways of setting boundaries to make sure things are actually getting done. Am I even expressing my boundaries in appropriate ways? Am I actually telling them, hey, this needs to be done or this doesn't need to be done, right? I mean, part of it could even be, are you still functioning from the paradigm of, oh, I'm talking to the cis hetero girlies in the audience. Oh, my husband is babysitting the kids. No, he's not. They're his kids. But if you're still utilizing that language, then there's definitely a cultural paradigm that needs to shift within yourself. There needs to be a decolonization from within. There needs to be deep healing from within. In this case, give your girlie a call. I'd be happy to support you. But whatever shame may be coming up or regret, you might even be pissed hearing what we're saying here today. Whatever is coming up for you is allowed. It's welcome. I would rather you feel these strong feelings and then reach out. You want to cuss a girl out on Instagram? Fine. I will hold space unless you get like weirdly deeply personal, then we'll talk. But like if it's just like, hey, what you said really messed me up and how dare you imply this, like, hey, I will hold that space. I'll gladly chat with you because you deserve to enjoy something so intimate fully and without condition.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful. I love it. I don't even want to add on to that. I want to sit with
Oh yeah,
that
do we have
because
questions?
ultimately that's what we need to do. That is exactly what the point is. It's like, yo, let's enjoy sex. Like for real, for real.
Mm-hmm.
That should be the point.
Yeah. Let's talk about sex, baby.
So it's like, since we talking about sex, it is on the next part of the sex talk that we address not just the shame and all of that kind of thing, because that's totally where I was going with it, right? You can't, or you don't get to even explore those questions. I remember when I was having those conversations with myself in terms of my own um, sense of, am I poly or am I a hoe? Or like, what does this make me?
Am
And
I
for
poly or am
early,
I
it's
a
just like,
hoe? Hey,
or am I, listen,
some
because the
poly
whole
people
thing
are
is,
hoes, and good for them. That's all I'm saying.
right. But I'm just saying, like, what, in this age of we don't like labels, but we label in everything, like, because that's
That
the
needs to
thing.
be an episode. That needs to please, baby Jesus. Like we need to
Like, I
talk
don't
next
like to
month
label
about that.
myself, but this is how I identify. Um, it was
Oh my
a
god.
long internal conversation of that is, am I just a hoe? Do I really need to have more than one man in my life? I kind of, yeah, kind of do. Okay, no, you don't, but it feels better though. Or like you said, am I just really, really, really paranoid about men, and so for that reason I like to have a plethora so that when one is acting up I can just switch to the next one. Like, what is really happening for me on a psychological level? Am I needing some healing because blah 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 blah, or am I really poly? Like,
Mm.
it's all these other things that it could be, and then maybe not, and so I remember having that conversation when you mentioned it, and then I remembered having a certain smidge of shame because I'm just like, I don't know how to identify. Does that make me a bigot now? Because I don't know how to, like, it was a whole new conversation. Does that say if I'm not
You really
okay
said.
with
You
my
really said.
identification? Because like,
I don't know how to identify myself. I might be homophobic.
mm,
It's such a queer experience though. Like
oh my
it's
god,
it's so real. You know who shoved me back in the closet when I was initially starting to explore? It was a member of my community. That's crazy.
isn't it always?
That's crazy that that is a
You're
thing.
not really
Those
poly. You're a
yeah,
blah 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 blah.
yeah.
Yeah,
You need to
it's a
stop
thing.
asking these questions because cishet men keep trying to take more space. Like, okay, cool. I guess I just won't ask any questions then and stay in the closet for another 5 years. It's fine. I don't need to know about myself.
Okay.
Yeah,
Forget getting it, actually having an education about where it is that I want to take my life. Let me just
yeah. It's
stay
fine.
over here
Yeah.
and not get to learn anything.
I
Yeah,
mean, we could do an entire episode on how
just on that.
radical leftism further radicalized the manosphere. Like, we could do an entire episode on that. And like, y'all,
I could do like
I'm
4 episodes on that.
I'm a leftist. I'm pro-Palestine. I'm queer as fuck. Guess what? We're radicalizing these people and we need to take ownership of that shit. I'm gonna be canceled after this. Just wait.
No, no, no way. I will stand with you. I will put my ass kicking boots on just for that. I have been out of the sphere of my ass kicking boots have basically been retired since I got this license because I'm not risking my license.
That's fair. That's fair.
I mean, I'm just saying because they are quick to snatch a license up when you are a little bit too radical. But my inner
Mm-hmm.
anarchist just said, "Hell no, you will not go." Um, all of. But yeah, I remember back in the day when it was, we're queer, we're here, get over it or whatever. Like all those things, and it's just where you're supposed to come out of the closet and be able to be proud. And then there's that other piece where it's just like, well, no, we don't want people to come out of the closet because it's not safe. And then it's we need to support people to lie about where it is that they are. But then it's just like, okay, but now you're creating an unsafe space for the other people. Like, what are we doing? Oh, and God forbid you ask a question, because now if you ask a question, well, you must be a homophobe. Like, oh my fuck. I'm
That's
gonna just stay
why.
over here and I'm gonna put my boots away and
Yeah.
y'all figure this shit out.
Well,
Because
that's
I
why
don't even know how
we
to
need to
fight the
stop
fight no more.
having umbrella conditions for people. Like I used to be in the camp of like it's not my responsibility to educate you, but it's because I was burnt out. It's because I was so exhausted. Actually, I did a TikTok. It was like a 10-minute TikTok where I talked about this. I know for a fact that I was one of the contributing factors, not the main factor because it's always multitudes. One of the contributing factors to somebody I knew that I went to high school with becoming far right Trumper. Because when they came to me with questions, I told them they needed to figure it out. It wasn't my responsibility to educate them. If we are not creating spaces for people to become educated, they will go to the communities that will hold them.
This is the argument. Oh my God, this is why I love you. I've had this argument so many times of, okay, so it's not your responsibility to educate them, but you want them to Google something where they can find all the information, all the wrong information,
The wrong
in the
information.
wrong direction to support whatever it is that they already sort of kind of leaning towards, as opposed to you taking the time, maybe not necessarily to educate them, but at least create a space where they're comfortable to ask the damn questions
Oh,
so that they're
you
not
know
out
the
there following the asshats.
It's
Like,
true. And
why do
here's the
we do
thing
this?
too. Like Andrew Tate. I'm not going to talk about Andrew Tate as a person because I don't know Andrew Tate personally, but I will talk about the videos that pop up on my feed randomly because apparently if you're super geeky and watch anime and video game YouTube shorts, eventually it all comes back to the manosphere, which is problematic in another way. But like
So
the the most frustrating thing about people like Andrew Tate is a lot of the stuff they say is similar to things that I would say. That's scary. So
wait, what?
yes, yeah. Yeah, you watch a lot of the earlier videos and it's about like personal self-esteem and taking ownership of like believing in yourself and all this stuff. And it starts out really great,
Yeah,
but then it
really
comes out of
positive. Yeah,
left field. And it's like part of your reason why you're like this is because women are no longer treating men like men. It's like how did we go from
wait.
self-actualization to blame? How did we go from this to that? And that's why I'm very hesitant. Sometimes I might I've set a boundary for myself of like I don't have the energy or the room to educate this person. And the thing is when you're not living with trauma and reactivity in your nervous system, it becomes a lot easier to discern if someone is genuinely curious versus if someone's just trying to get a rise out of you. I did a did you ever watch Ned's Declassified School Survivor Guide at all on Nickelodeon?
I think I might have seen like one episode.
Okay,
I
that's
can
fine.
say that. Like
There
one.
was there was this moment, you heard about that whole thing where they did that documentary that was about like all of the child actors and what they experienced on like Nickelodeon set,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So there's this thing where Devin, the actor who played Ned, and his two castmates from Ned's Declassified, they did a really terrible joke. It was basically it sounded very like making light of children being sexually assaulted and their colleagues.
Mhm.
Immediately, I think from my understanding of the situation on the live, he apologized. They invited Drake Bell, who was one of the people part of that whole process, to like talk on their podcast
Mhm.
about the things, to bring light to it and all that stuff. And it became this thing where it's like, yes, they messed up. Yes, it was terrible. They should never have done that. And I fully agree that that was not okay. But if they apologized and they're trying to engage with transformative justice and they're trying to do better, and people are like, but you're it's not enough, then what can people do? It comes back to everything that we're talking about. If we're creating a society in which people are just accepted to do the right thing without offering grace for mistakes for certain things. Actually, this is going to be really edgy too. You can't cherry pick your transformative justice. It's either for everyone or it's for no one. We can't say this person's more deserving than this person. It has to be possible for anyone and everyone to achieve it, because transformative justice emphasizes the person who was hurt being seen, witnessed, and heard, and telling people what they need to get out of it, as opposed to what we're doing culturally as a society, which is retributive justice. Cancel quote unquote culture is no
Cancel
different
culture,
than
yeah.
a scarlet letter on a woman
Mm-hmm.
who's being hypersexual back in the day, right? It's no different than putting people in stockades and throwing rotten fruits and vegetables at them. It's not about the process of healing and growing as individuals and as community. It's about the gratification you get, the schadenfreude you get at seeing somebody get their comeuppance. Because the people you're actually mad at are in positions of power, and because you have no control over
And we
them,
aren't recognizing them at all.
at least you can take it out on this person or that person on the internet or online, right? So to bring it back full circle, because I know I talked about a lot, when I talked about cancel culture in relation to this video, the person's like, hey, I made a bad joke. I apologize. I'm trying to do everything I can. And I was like, hey, I'm not saying what they did was right. I'm not even saying I'm really interested in like engaging with their stuff personally. But if we're not offering people the path forward, what happens? Two people, like multiple people commented. One person's like, they clearly don't even know what accountability is. Another person, the first person, I did video recordings for both. One person responded and I responded, and we reached a middle ground. I could tell they were activated and reacted and were upset, but they were willing to listen and engage in dialogue. The other person, the video I made for them, just responded with like, but you don't know what you're talking about. Clearly, you don't know the difference between this and that. And it's like, okay. And then I made the decision not to engage, because it's not my responsibility to educate somebody who doesn't want to be educated. And I think that's the
Right.
difference. When we're talking about things like sex, when we're talking about things like social justice, when we're talking about things about equity, it's not our responsibility to educate people who don't actually want to be educated. But if someone does, and they're coming to us, for whatever reason, they trust us to give them what they need. If we act out, we run the risk of further radicalizing them, because they will find safety among communities who don't want us to exist. And that's why we're getting like way off from the sex talk, but maybe it'll be another episode. One of my favorite people, and I'm brain farting on his name. Give me 1 second to Google this really quick. Daryl
I love
Davis.
Google.
Daryl
Okay.
Davis. Do you know who Daryl Davis is?
No.
Okay, this beautiful black king literally has 200 clan robes from over two, and this was like 10 years ago, might be more now, from 200 clan members he converted, because he invited them to sit down and have a meal with him one by one. And what he found, and he has a book
Wow.
about his work, what he found was that these radicalized clan members who do
I never
fucked
even
up
met a black person.
things, yeah, who do fucked up things. Not only never met a black, it wasn't always never met a black person. Some of it was like they just didn't have anyone. They had terrible at-home lives. They had terrible situations,
Mm-hmm.
and the place they found community in happened to be bigots, happened to be violent racists, happened to be people who actively try to cause harm.
Mm-hmm.
Your perspective in life really changed. And y'all, we are both queer people of color in this call here. Like we are part of the group that are most likely to be targeted by people in positions of
Right.
power. And what we are telling you on this podcast is, when you heal yourself, there's no longer an enemy. It's just like, oh wow, yeah, there's just a lot of fucking traumatized people traumatizing each other with varying degrees and levels of power.
So many varying degrees.
Yeah, and that's
And
it.
and I love that you said that, because this is a great place sort of kind of for us to start wrapping.
Yeah.
Because it's like I hate it, but it works for the people. Hurt people hurt people.
Mhm.
I hate it because in so many ways it gives people permission to hurt people, because I was hurt. And so now I'm gonna lash out and hurt everybody. Like, no, that is not your excuse, sir. That is not your excuse, ma'am.
It's
That is
not an
not your excuse.
excuse, it's context. That's it.
Okay? That's
Mm-hmm.
it. And so when you recognize that you're hurt, You can either continue picking at the scab, or you can get yourself some Neosporin and a damn Band-Aid. Okay? Those are your options. If you're the pick at the scab person, well, guess what? You're going to continue being hurt. And it's going to be really hard for anybody to actually be able to come in there and help you. Which brings us to another full circle moment of, let's have these conversations so that we can actually help each other, so that we can maybe support each other and no longer picking at the scabs, so that we can show each other, hey, by the way, this is Neosporin and this is how it works. Or this is crema de yo no sé qué, and this is how that works. Okay?
Ooh, can I add to that?
Absolutely.
Let's be willing to look bad. And let's be
Yes.
willing to have grace for people who say the
Yes,
wrong
and let's be
thing.
willing to not know and learn how to do something different, which is from what you said, that is the biggest point. It's the opportunity to change. That is why when I first started this shift in my life, my name was Rain O Change, because the
Ooh.
only thing that is definite is change.
Mm.
Okay? That's the only constant in life is change. And if we are not giving each other permission to learn some new shit and then to move forward with the new information, we don't get to grow as a community, as a society, as a kindredship. We have to allow ourselves to grow. We're not always going to be toxic out here. Sometimes we're going to get the Neosporin and actually do some healing. So
And
with that in mind,
that's why next time we got to talk about labels. And like, Shae, also, can we, girl, we haven't talked since our chat last time on the podcast. We need to find time to
you're
just
right.
kiki, like for real. Because I get so much
We
good energy
do.
from you, boo boo. Let's hang.
Love it. I love talking to you too. That's why I was just like, okay, we're gonna wait. We're gonna wait until you're ready.
Thank you.
Because this conversation needed to happen. Yes, we do need to do that. We need to make time. Which brings me to our closing point. How can we talk to you? Give us your, well, not digits anymore.
Give me your OnlyFans link. I'll hit you up. We'll chat. It'll be a good time.
Oh, girl, I wish I had one of those.
Girl, I've thought of selling, if I had pretty enough feet, I've thought of selling feet pics. I don't know why people are so
I
weird
have
about that.
lovely feet. I've actually been told several times that I need to do an OnlyFans just so I could show my feet. But
I don't know why people are
I'm a
so, that's the
therapist.
thing. I've known people who got more upset about the idea of selling feet pics. I'm like, no one's got to know it's your feet. They ain't got to know. You ain't got to put your face in there. It ain't got to be your feet. It's just feet. Who's going to know? It's like that
Where can
meme.
you find
Nobody's
you?
going to know.
I don't want to know. Sorry. Y'all can't leave us alone together, I'm telling you. What are we doing? Where can we find you, Jemarc?
Oh, yes. So I'm a Philly-based trauma recovery coach and wellness consultant, but I work with people globally. So you can find me on my website, www.jmarcaccento.com, on Instagram at jmarcaccento, or hit your girl up with an email, spiritualgeek@jmarcaccento.com. If you want me to privately coach you, I'd be honored. My big thing this year is consultation gigs. So if you want me to come into your nonprofit or for-profit org and be like, hey, this person can help us, you have to use corpo speak with them. Be like, this person can help make us more productive by establishing how important wellness is. Really, I'm just there to help people heal their trauma and not act in reactivity anymore. But that's you can't market that way. So
People
yeah,
don't know what that means.
I'd be honored to support and serve anyone and everyone. I'm currently accepting new clients. So if you want to come through, let's chat. Like I said, I can work with you anywhere in the world. It's one of the fringe benefits of taking this route instead of going the traditional one.
Stop bragging. Because I am limited, guys. I am limited.
You are, but
no,
people can get you through insurance, and that always breaks my heart that I can't offer that. So
this is true. People can get me through insurance. Of course, you can find me at pretty much on, I think, all of the social media outlets as Rain O Change. Or you can email me at shae@domorerequirebetter.com. I welcome everybody. I am technically only licensed at this time. I don't know if anybody noticed, but my license letters have changed a little bit. I got a C now, which is why I can do insurance. And so yes, I am licensed right now in Virginia, here in Georgia, and Tennessee. So, and I am applying for licensure in Tejas. Entonces, thank you so much, everybody, for coming out tonight, or for watching. If you are watching after it has been live, please, every day is a good day for therapy. Every day. If you woke up today, it's a good day for therapy. And yeah, do more, acquire better with your 50%. Thank you so much for co-hosting with me. Let's chit chat another time, and have a great night.
Have a good night, everyone. Wop, 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 dot, fuck 'em up. Dot, wop, 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 wop. I'ma do my stuff.
So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will.
If this the land of the free, it was a freedom then, when they annexed Hawaii and called it Cedar Lands, without any type of payment and no signing off. Called themselves a republic in 1894. 1.2 million acres overtaken from the native Hawaiians. When they resisted, the West retaliated in violence and erasure. The Hawaiian language is banned as part of colonialism's plan to expand, yeah.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No work out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.
So if you put Hawaii in a perspective, well, Black and Asian history is interconnected. Considering the fight with the Pacific, then of course, versus Asia, they was treated as a middleman for war, but didn't let the Western colorism run its course, cause dark skin was a sign of dignity to core. The land was taken in the name of capitalism, when prior to it was an actual kingdom. Clap back at the system.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No work out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.